Here we go with some DM tips for Ank'Harel. This is chapter 4 of Netherdeep, Call of the Netherdeep. And I'm going to look at this in several videos because it's a real big chapter when you include the faction missions. So the first part will be the Welcome to Ank'Harel and basically the exploration of the city of Ank'Harel. So spoilers will abound here. If you're a player, please come back after you play the adventure. In fact, after you play probably all of chapter 4. And this is chapter 4 of Call of the Netherdeep for character levels 7 when they arrive here. Any page references I have here or in the notes or the video description below will be to the hardcover. And the authors are James Hake and many, many others contributed to this adventure as well. So, pacing for a 4-hour adventure. Hour 0 through 1 would be character introductions, recap, going over the rival relationships, pages 11 through 15 of the book, and then Arrival in Ank'Harel, which is starting on page 78 of the book. And then hour 1 to 2 would be the Ank'Harel Gazetteer, exploring Ank'Harel, and hopefully allowing the players and their characters to make first contact with the 3 main factions here. That being the Letter from the Allegiance, which is on page 96. Making contact with the Consortium of the Vermillion Dream, which would be going into the First Eclipse Tavern and having drinks and asking about them. That'd be on page 104, or a letter directly from them on page 104 if they already know of the characters. And then for the Library of the Cobalt Soul, it'd be meeting with question and or IO from the Cobalt Soul on page 112. Then the characters can start going on missions for factions of their choice, and the first couple missions should take a couple hours, and hopefully they'll have picked a faction at this point. So if you're picking this up again, you would do character intros and recaps and rivals again, and then mission 1 for each faction starts on page 96, 104, and 112, and then you proceed to mission 2, page 97, 105, and 113. So for pacing, the players or the characters could explore more or less of Ank'Harel in order to fit it in the time slot you have. And if the players are willing to go up to 8 hours, they could take part in missions 1 and 2 for multiple factions. And then the cliffhanger at the end would be the invitation to join the faction or factions of their choosing, being on pages 99, 107, and 116. All right, so that's the pacing. Now, this video I'm going to go over the first part, the first 2 hours, the Ank'Harel Gazetteer and exploring Ank'Harel. So I have taken the text from the adventure and just put a gazetteer here of the city and all the text from the city. And of course, I'll have this hidden, but as the players explore, I'll uncover more and more of it. And each description is just like the top level, what you see when you arrive type description. Anything more that the players get to would be from their exploring the different areas. Of course, there's great artwork here of the different locations. You can put that in the adventure as well. All right, so I did that. Here I have the map of Ank'Harel. Then I have the maps are provided in the adventure, and these will come into play really more when the missions start. So I'll go over this again when I do the video for the missions. Here's a fantastic map by Heroic Maps that could be used for this adventure. Another one by Heroic Maps here, and another one here, and here, and here. A whole bunch by Heroic Maps. All right, so let's focus on the first part. The blurb. So, the gloom of Bazzoxan gives way to the sunlight and warm winds of Marquette as you arrive in the metropolis of Ank'Harel. So that's the character's arrival. Beautiful picture here of Ank'Harel. I got just the NPC information kind of summarized for me the rivals. So they could be friendly or indifferent or hostile. If they're friendly, they could share information about the city with the adventurers. If they're indifferent, they'll probably go their own way and won't make contact with the adventurers after the arrival. They might, if the individuals in the rivals are friends, still invite each other to lunch and such. And if they're hostile, completely part way, right away, as soon as they can. If there are individual friends, they might secretly try to contact the party. By this point, AO is worried that the group has lost respect for her leadership. She's had some stumbles in the previous adventures. She's worried the group questions her decisions. She's just out more and more to prove herself, though. And the rivals want to be the adventurers who find this quest that the rivals and adventures are going on, the ones to succeed. So they will be trying to succeed, not necessarily helping the party for the party to succeed. Dermot, he's worried for Ao. Galsariad, he's shut off completely. He feels underqualified. Irvin, he's far from the Luxon beacons, so that terrifies him, but he still is adventure with his party. And Maggie, the ogre, always pensive, is even quieter now. Okay, so the party's going to arrive in Ank'Harel. They've come from Bazzoxan, so it's a stark contrast from the gloomy, dark Bazzoxan to the bright, blue-skied Ank'Harel, warm desert, climate. And then, if they had traveled with Alosia, or traveled right behind Alosia, they will arrive in the Suncup Bazaar. So I got the maps here. Just put them right on top of each other. So let's go to the Suncup Bazaar. Here we go. They're going to arrive up here on the top of the tavern in the Suncup Bazaar. And if they're moments behind Alosia, she's like just coming down the stairs to get out of there. And as soon as she sees them, she will take off running. So a chase across the Suncup Bazaar, that's what happens. She will frantically offer employment to the characters should they catch up with her to save her life. And if they agree, she'll lead them to the First Eclipse Tavern, which is what they arrived on top of. She'll also give them a map of Ank'Harel, which, well, no, she won't, but they could buy a map of Ank'Harel at any shop in the city, pretty much. So here's what that looks like. A large map of Ank'Harel there for the party. All right, so that's Alosia. If they take up her offer and agree to meet with her superiors, she'll take them into the First Eclipse Tavern, to the wall that's decorated with the old cast lids. She'll wrap her knuckles there 3 times to open the secret pathway, and then lead them into the storeroom and get Vril the Moth. Vril being an evil elf who, if Alosia has any idea that they have the Jewel of 3 Prayers, will ask to see the Jewel of 3 Prayers. If the party should mention the vision of the Apotheon while she's looking at the jewel, then she will say, yes, our studies have turned up fragments of history about the Apotheon. She'll recognize that the Jewel of 3 Prayers is probably a vestige of divergence, and in its awakened state, and rumors are that it could grow even more powerful. When she's done talking to the party, she'll offer for them to stay at the First Eclipse Tavern until they find lodging of their own. She'll give them a map of Ank'Harel, and she'll have Alosia follow her out. Then she'll tell the party that the consortium will find them when they've got lodgings of their own. All right, now if the party arrives with Prolix, the tiefling, the member of the Legions of Allsight, then he will take them to the Sigil District. So let's change this map here. Back to the Sigil District, arriving in one of the buildings there, and then he'll ask them if they want to meet with his superiors. And if they do, he will take them to meet with his superiors. Now, Question could very well be with them as well. Question is a member of the Library of the Cobalt Soul. She'll thank Prolix for helping her return to Ank'Harel and tell everyone that she's going to go inform her superiors what happened in Bazzoxan. Here the adventure says that she will give the party a sending stone, but then later in the missions, she comes and visits them herself, and her superior gives the party the sending stone. So I would go with that later explanation of how they get a sending stone there. So that's her involvement. Then if they follow Prolix, he will take them to meet with the Allegiance, and they will meet specifically with Alakritos, the goblin, and he'll offer them tea. He'll listen to their experiences in Bazzoxan. If they share any information about the jewel, he'll ask to see it, correctly identify it as a vestige of divergence, say it bears the hallmarks of divine creation. If they mention the vision they had, he will claim not to know anything about it, but a 16 insight check will tell them that there was a spark of recognition in his eyes when the sunken city was mentioned. And if they confront him about that, he'll just raise his hands and say, "All in good time. I've already said more than I ought," to a group of untested hopefuls. Then Prolix will offer for them to stay as apartment until they find a place of their own and give them a map of Ank'Harel. So then the party is basically made contact with two of the factions likely, or maybe one of the factions if they follow to Losia. And they'll go off to explore Ank'Harel on their own, waiting for the factions to contact them. So here's where the Gazetteer of Ank'Harel comes into play. And what I'll probably do is, have each party member roll a persuasion check, whoever's the most persuasive, or just look at their persuasion modifier. Ask them, where they want to go to explore, and then go character by character through explorations of the city and what they might find out. So the city, there's a Gazetteer that they can put together. They won't know all this information at the start, but by the end of 2 hours, they probably will have found out most of this information. The city Ank'Harel translates to Jewel of Hope, and it was established 400 years ago as an Oasis trading post. There's about 300,000 people living here. It's ruled by an ancient brass dragon, and that dragon's got an elderly human named Gemashega, who is the Grand Maven of Ank'Harel, the acting chancellor. The Code of Ord are the laws of Ank'Harel, named after the dragon, who is Jaman Sa'ord. And they're enforced by the hands of Ord. Any heinous crimes, any capital crimes are ruled on by the judges in the Cerulean Palace, and in some cases by the dragon himself. Worship of prime deities is welcomed. Worship of betrayer gods is punished on a case-by-case basis, and the city lies in the center of a vast desert. Lodging, the party can procure. There's various options for lodging, from squalid all the way up to wealthy. Interestingly, the lodgings are not listed in the Gazetteer entries, and I might change that. Don't know. But it'd be easy enough to find out what the lodgings are, so I wouldn't hesitate to share that with the party. The factions, most of them are well enough known. Allegiance of Allsight, Consortium of the Vermillion Dream, Hands of Ord, Library of the Cobalt Soul, Scarbearers, Sentinels of Memory, and the Veil. Now, I have a description of each of those with things that aren't well known, not shared. So Allegiance is pretty much well known everywhere. And they are from across Marquette. They've come here to rebuild the robust academic traditions that define the elves and the orcs of ancient Kelmoro. And they're focused on uncovering secrets of Kalmaro. They have the headmasters are James Cryan and Grisella Kritos that the party might have already met. Then you have the Consortium of the Vermillion Dream. They seek the stories others fear to know. They don't share where their headquarters are. They don't share who their leaders are. They're actually 5 founders of the Consortium of the Vermillion Dream who are all still alive. And it's a very young institution. The older institutions, such as the Allegiance of Allsight, Library of the Cobalt Soul, are concerned about how they're profit-driven. And they are, because they sell their services. They're buying off the Sentinels of Memory to get on their side. And they're trying to find basically everything hidden in Kalmaro. Then you got the Library of the Cobalt Soul. And their headquarters are the Temple of the Mentor, a Temple of Ayun, the Knowing Mentor, in the Guided District, that is. Their leader is very young, in his 20s, Jamil Alethea. And they are allied with the Allegiance of Allsight and with the Hands of Ord. They oppose the Consortium of the Vermillion Dream. They will consider any volunteers. They're founded in Wildemont centuries ago. They stand against conflict, propaganda, and upheaval. They spread across Exandria. They founded the Temple of the Mentor in Ank'Harel about 150 years ago, so 250 years after the city's founding. And they're here to root out evil in the city's civilian factions. They know that the Consortium of the Vermillion Dream members reportedly wield magic weapons made of some strange red mineral, the likes of which they have never seen, and they're working with the Allegiance of Allsight. But they're wary of that faction's fascination with Kalmaro. Then you have the Hands of Ord, the peacekeeping organization of the city. You have the Scar Bearers, who are the gladiatorial arena running individuals here, a mercenary group. One of the first groups here in Ank'Harel, at the founding of Ank'Harel, and they are respected by Jaman Sa or the dragon. Then you have the Sentinels of Memory. Let the past die in peace. This organization was founded by Watcher Trask, who is an elf priest and a former cleric of Ioun, and he still is their leader. They are fanatical. They believe that Kalmaro must be kept secret. They believe that the gods tried to expunge this city, and they might do the same to Ank'Harel. They'll do whatever it takes to make sure no one speaks of Kalmaro. They know the consortium of the Vermillion Dream has been studying, supplying them with funds and agents. They're cautious, though, and they should be, because they're just being bought off by the consortium. And finally, the Veil, the well-known network of spies and thieves and assassins, well-known, but no one knows any of the details about the organization. Okay, so that's the factions that are here. Now let's look at an overview of the city districts. You have the Alluvium district. This district is a mixture of dense. Oh, let's zoom in here too. Okay, Alluvium district right here. Mixture of dense residential sections, sites of clay, strip mining, and spacious plazas. And then inside the Alluvium, you have the Guardians, the Alluvium Gardens. You have the Forum. You have the Mines. Then you have the palace itself, the Cerulean Palace. The purple and blue spires of the palace reflect the sun's light off their edges like a sun-dappled waterfall. The palace's ornate exterior is covered with glittering designs of lapis lazuli and turquoise with brass accents. The inside contains chambers used for deliberation, debate, judging, etc. And beneath, there's a rumored dungeon, the Oblog, also known as the Scarlet Oblette. At the center is the Chamber of Judgment, and there is a grand stone dais there, intricately carved bronze throne studded with sapphires, the seat of Jaman Saord, and there's said to be a duplicate of the same in his private quarters. The Circlet District, being here to the south. It's a residential district with few taverns and other places of commerce. It's so packed with buildings that it's customary to travel along the rooftops there. There's an interesting place called the Lyrian Linen, long sheets of fabric hanging off every rafter. There's a little bit about if you ask for cloth dyed white stone green, you'll be sold dangerous narcotics and other forbidden concoctions. There's no reference to this in the adventure any other place I can find, so maybe that is a very cool Critical Role Easter egg there. I don't know enough to know for sure. If you do, leave a comment below. I'd love to know. Yeah, so that's that one. Then you have the Step Aside Tavern and Inn, which is very welcoming. It has some lovely desserts on display there, run by a couple former mercenaries. It also has an interesting aside, a whisper, the phrase, "Pardon my steps as I pass through," they'll lead you to a safe house. I wonder if that's also a Critical Role Easter egg. Okay, then you have the Guided District. That's up here on top of one of the mountains that's been cut down. And in the Guided District, there are houses of worship, with each of the prime deities represented. The architecture is more ornamental than in the rest of the city. Many of the temples are adorned with intricate mosaics and crowned with minarets and golden spires. There are plenty of vagabonds frequent the area because the temples feed them and clothe them. And the Hands of Ord maintain a notable presence in that part of the city. There is the Blessing Well, where people can be lowered in to have visions from the gods. There is the Necropolis, and interestingly, the Necropolis has a small temple to the Matron of Death, who is perceived differently here than in the rest of Exandria. She does not go by the Raven Queen here, instead she goes by the Dusk Maven, and is portrayed as a keen-eyed vulture with a golden funerary mask and feathers, whose colors range from sunset hues to midnight black. Then you have the Temple of Mentor. of the Mentor, the Temple of the Ioun. And it's more a library than a temple. And this is where the players can go to get missions from the Cobalt Library of the Cobalt Soul. And they will meet with the Io Solaire, a half-orc monastic operative there. Then you have the Tower of Memory. This is where the this is where the Sentinels of Memory are headquartered, and Watcher Byron is the leader here, evil gnome who rarely leaves the tower. Then you have the Ridge. On the opposite side of the city from the guided district is the Ridge, which is on another cutoff part of the mountains. And this place is a very industrialized area. It's got the shipyard for the airships of the Alsfaran Union shipyard. And it's got the forge here, the Sunfire Forge, both interesting places. Then you have the River District right here. And in the River District, you have the Life Dome, which will play a part in some of the missions that will come up. You have Crux Bakery, which will also play a part in some of the missions that come up. And you have the Steam Gardens, which if the characters take advantage of the spa there, they can gain temporary hit points. It says 8 hours are required of spa time for the temporary hit points. I might lower that a little bit because that seems pretty excessive to be in a spa for 8 hours. Then you have the Sand Herald District, which is all around the Cerulean Palace. And this is where the Hands of Ord are. This is where the bowl is. You can see the bowl right there on the map. So the bowl being a gladiatorial arena, and this is something that the characters could take part in. 20 gold pieces to enter. And they'll have a combat. You can set up a combat one-on-one or a group combat or something like that. You have the Skyport here, where the this famous Adala Skyport is located. The central terminal, really cool, has an elaborate stained glass ceiling which depicts a mosaic of the surface of Exandria with glowing dots moving across it representing every skyship the Alsfaran Union currently has in flight. And you can catch outbound flights from here to all across Exandria. And then you have the Ord Bastion, where the law enforcement resides, and actually the whole families live here because it's a lifelong commitment. Then you have the Sigil District, where the players may have first entered. It's got a couple of institutions of learning. It's got the Crystal Chateau, which is the more exclusive one, and everyone who learns at the Crystal Chateau must become a member of the Allegiance of All Sight. And the party will probably arrive here, and several of the missions center around the Crystal Chateau. Then you have, very interesting, the Maw. This is a 150-foot across pit, roped off, admission prohibited to all except for holders of the Allegiance of All Sight badges, and a path spirals down it. It's guarded by Scarbearer veterans. It's got an orc scholarly excavator overseeing them, who permits only those with badges to enter, and gives only one warning before ordering mercenaries to attack if someone tries to enter without a badge. Then you have the library, the Omnival Library. And in this library, the characters can research some stuff with some of the missions that will come up. And then you have another school, the Terrace School. The larger of the city's 2 universities. This one covers a broad range of things in addition to magic. And interestingly, the Terrace School and the Crystal Chateau both have free tuition for any member of the city. Then you have the Suncup Bazaar, which is to the west here, the Cerulean Palace area. And this is where the consortium of the Vermillion Dream makes their base, in a tavern there. The tavern being the First Eclipse Tavern. There's also a place called the Bone Garden that will come up in a couple of the missions. This is a pawn shop where the party might go to recover an item that had been stolen and pawned. You have the First Eclipse Tavern. In sharp contrast to the glimmering Lux Run Casino across the street, the First Eclipse has a maroon stone wall and an ash black door. If the party comes in there and asks about the consortium, then the Dragonborn there, who is the owner, will tell them, we'll give them some drinks, tell them they're on the house. When they finish him, he'll tell them that the consortium will find them. Then you have the Lux Run Casino. And the Lux Run Casino, there's another several things parties can do while they're exploring the city. Several games of chance here: Evandra's Favor, Gambit of Ord, and Kwan Adrensel, also known as Run of Luck. And this place gives a lot of its funds to the Vale. And then finally, you have the Mystic Pursuits shop, colorful shop with the soothsayer here that the party might see through, but as long as they treat the soothsayer with respect, they can purchase some magical gear here, spell component wise, that is, so as well as some jewelry. If they try to steal anything from here, because there's quite a bit of very valuable jewelry on display, an invisible stalker will attack them. And that will play into one of the missions that comes later, where the party is attacked by an invisible stalker. They might think it came from here. It turns out it doesn't, but they could get information that might lead them to where it did come from if they come here to investigate. All right, that would be what would be covered in the first 2 hours. You can see there's tons of stuff to do. Not a lot of combat except for the bowl, or if they tried to enter the maw, or just in general get in trouble in other ways. But plenty of exploration and some casino games, and really a chance to find out who the factions are in the city and who they might want to follow up with. At the very end, hopefully they should be receiving their letter. Let's go back to the summary here. They should be receiving their letter from the Allegiance, or the Vermillion Dream, or Question will come and find them for the Library of the Cobalt Soul. All right, that's the overview. Music, there's a lot of good music here. So Ank'Harel, we got Arabesque, Desert Bazaar, Oasis City. Let me turn those on here. So here is Arabesque. Just general music for Ank'Harel. Here's Desert Bazaar. A little more subdued. And here's Oasis City. Then you have the Coliseum for the bowl. You have Blacksmith Shop for the Ridge area, industrial area. Cistern for the Life Bowl, Life Dome, I mean. And if they were to be hovering around the maw, looking down there, I might turn on Ancient Artifact, just as kind of a foreshadowing of what they might run into below. Don't have a whole lot of knowledge checks that really come into play in this adventure, but I'll put 3 of them in the notes below and then a video description. What the party might start out knowing about the Allegiance or the Consortium or the Library of the Cobalt Soul, which you can get from the background for this adventure as well. Resources, I'll put a link to my Netherdeep macros for Underwater and Iridium, which will come into place soon for this adventure. And please come back again, and I'll be putting videos out for the different faction missions next. Thank you for watching.